Hello, everybody. I'm Peter Grant with Zaner Metals in Denver. And this is This Week in Metals. And this is actually the last trading week of June. Time
Right.
is flying by.
And an
You,
and an unusual June, wouldn't you say, Peter? It was
yeah,
so active, huh?
absolutely. It was a
Yeah.
busy June.
Wow.
You're like all pinstriped up there. You look like a
Oh,
banker.
you like my banker look. Well, it's
What's
it's
up?
not like I'm appearing at Barclays or anything, that whole thing, if you remember. But
Wh- what's
you
with
know,
Barclays?
well, Barclays has a closed door locked meeting at a big circular oaken desk every year, which was headed by Richard Paulson, who was the CEO, and Hank Paulson's brother, and
Not right.
they were an interesting team to say the least, and always enjoyable to chat with. And Dickie asked me to come by, and at the time, I'd just been writing my initial series on the Silken Road, and where I felt that China was going to be making a major push into gold. And the owner of Newsweek at that time is an old friend of mine, and he asked me to do an exclusive for that for Newsweek Asia. So I did, and Richard, who's always got his nose in everything, found the article and said, Peter, I'd like you to come and speak to the round table. And I was stunned, because
That's
that
a
is
big deal.
oh yeah, it's
Holy,
closed door,
and
baby.
maybe a little
Barclays.
intimidating. Well, not for
They've been
you.
doing it since 1650. I mean, it's not like you just walk in off the street, and
Right.
I was pretty impressed. And so I walked into the meeting, and I knew about two-thirds of the people at the table, and sat down, and Richard introduced me. He said, I'm going to give Pete some time to speak on China and how he feels the future is going to be with China and gold. And everyone to give them a little time here. And so I sat down and gave them all the numbers and my projections and how I felt they're going to open the old silken trade roads, and things
What
were gonna
what
be
year was
very.
this? What year are you talking about?
Oh, we're talking 12 years ago.
Yeah, you were
Yeah.
way ahead of the game.
Well, it was just very apparent to me that the yuan was so weak. The only way they had two ways to do it: they could back it with oil, or they could back it with gold, and they had to make it stronger in order for the Chinese party to get stronger.
Mhm.
And it was either and I was hearing from dealers that I knew in Asia that they were seeing large amounts of gold being purchased by central bank, and I thought that was so odd. And the more I looked into it, the more it made sense. So I thought that this would be a good place to unveil it. Would be after my Newsweek article, which appeared in Asia, would be to sit down with the boys at Barclays and say, "Hey, this is where I see it going, and I'd love some feedback." And so I sat down and got through my whole presentation, and I got to tell you, it was nothing but crickets. Nobody believed a word of it. They were all looking at me like I had two heads, and who's this guy? And okay, yeah, you're famous for being a floor trader and moving a lot of weight in the silver pits. So what? Your gold analogy sucks. And there was one guy who ended up writing a lot of books and ended up being quite a celebrity in gold, who I won't name, at the meeting, said, "You're the first person I've seen that gets it." And I was kind of flattered by that. But I have to tell you, nobody liked it. So my invitation to the round table of Barclays Gold, which has since closed, and was kind of a disaster. And 12 years later, now it's like everybody's going, yeah, we know all about it, and I still at least get calls from major players as to what's going on. So
Right.
that was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, over the last decade plus, I mean, China certainly has become the major player
No question.
in the gold market.
I mean, I hit it right on the head, but I didn't quite think it was going to get this big over this period of
Well, that
time.
was about the time that they first announced their gold reserves, and everybody was stunned by
Yeah,
the number. And I can't remember exactly what the number was,
yeah. It was.
but it was like,
It's like we
holy
got
cow!
two bars over here, right? It was like we got two little gold bars over here, maybe 800, and the next thing you know, they had like 14,000, and then it jumped to like 32,000, and you were like going, Then they started announcing metric tons, and you were like going, "What's going on over here?"
Yeah,
And nobody, including
clearly something
myself,
was up.
yeah, nobody knew. Not only was something up, but I mean, when it started going in exponential numbers, and then all of a sudden the numbers started getting modified because they knew that they were like climbing too fast because they were bringing in all that gold from Africa that nobody knew about, and it was a real cat and mouse thing. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about last week real quick.
Yeah,
Um, gold ended up 1.6%, set a new almost an 8-year high.
seven and a
So it
half
took,
years. Yeah,
yeah, so it
yeah,
took out the high from May, and and closed pretty solid on the week. It closed above that previous high from May,
right.
which is really encouraging. It sold off a little intraday on Friday, but snapped back late in the session. So again, I'm pretty optimistic. Going into this week. What do you think?
Well, I think it's good that you pointed out it was towards the end of the session. We had early liquidation of positions and ETFs. I think we saw some early profit taking, end of the month profit taking, and you made some accounts looking good, some nice profits being put in. And the next thing you know, the Dow is just in free fall, and everybody, and by the way, led by the Nasdaq, which I thought was interesting because it's
Oh, the
been
Nasdaq was so overcooked.
oh, thank you very much. You really, that's a good way to put it. And boy, when it fell hard, and everybody went, "Uh-oh, let's start running for the door." And they started accumulating these profits they'd had over the week. And they said, "You know what? We're going safe harbor." And they ran into gold. And I mean, things were just lighting up. And the next thing I know, we're making new highs on the move, new high for yearly. Next thing I know, yearlies. And now we're punching out 7.5 year highs. And I'm like, what the? And we're still going. And I'm talking to people who are saying, watch out because Hong Kong could open up smoking. And if it does, everybody that's short is going to get caught because we're going to make new contract highs.
Yeah, and it's a holiday shortened week as well,
Right. Good
so
point.
it could be interesting for sure. But the trend is your friend, my friend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Uh,
it,
s-
go ahead.
Silver did okay
Yeah.
last week, closed up 0.7%, still in the range, but
Yeah. Range bound for
yeah, it
sure.
was the second higher weekly close, which I like, but
Yeah.
I really need to, the fact that it's struggled above 18 bucks is a bit of a concern. What are you thinking?
I like the way you put it, and it was a struggle, and you could see it was coming under a lot of pressure. And I agree with you. And the phones weren't ringing to buy silver this week as much as they were last week. So I concur with you. I think it's still under pressure.
Yeah, and we saw a little bit of a rebound in the ratio as well. I mean, not much, but it seems gold is, as we get this seemingly this new surge of COVID cases, I
Yeah.
think gold is probably a little bit more favored at this point as a haven.
And we're never going to get an honest release as to the numbers of cases or new cases as they were talking about them in China as to what they are. It's always a guess. They lie to WHO and they lie to CDC here, so we will just never know. So that's a very valid point.
Yeah. Platinum and palladium were down a little bit over
Right,
1%. And again, I think a lot of that probably has to do with the resurgence of COVID and worries that there may be additional shutdowns, and that will, sap auto demand.
right.
And
Which by the way was continues to look very bad. So the question becomes, when do we see people going back to work so we can start selling trucks? Because when they get back to work, I think we'll see good copper demand.
yeah. Well, what about copper? Copper was up over 2% last week.
Yeah,
Uh, and the market looks really good. probably up until Friday, and I have a little bit of a concern,
Okay.
only because we went up and retested that 270 high,
Oh, the
just
double
shy of
top they put in.
270,
Yeah. Yeah.
and failed from there and closed lower on the day on Friday.
Right.
It's still a long way to the confirmation point of a double top. That's down at 253.
Bottom, you
Um,
mean? Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
a little bit concerned. Are you concerned at all, or you still like this
Well,
market?
I think there's a couple things going on. A couple of very bullish things that hit the market. So I mean, I was talking to our some of our salvage guys, some of our recyclers, our scrappers that Pete. You're not wearing their T-shirt today, as a matter
I'm not.
of
We shot a video with those guys again today. I was like,
oh,
I only own one Scrap Life T-shirt.
okay, all
They're
right.
gonna have to send me more wardrobe.
They're just the greatest guys.
They
United
are.
Metals Recyclers are just some of the most tremendous guys in recycling, and they're breaking their backs for all of us to bring the recycled metal to America that we desperately need. Thanks, guys. A little shout out there.
They've got cool
But
trucks.
they have
Oh,
very cool trucks, man, and they have cool equipment too.
yeah,
John Sackow makes the coolest stuff. He's another great guy too in the recycling area. But the thing is this: they're closing down sectors of the mines again. They're having another outbreak in Chile, and Peru was spotty again. And the Mexican Miners Association was talking about closing everything down again as well. So we're seeing some real bad news as far as COVID coming out of Central and South America. That's a big deal, Pete. We see
yeah.
production get cut again. This stuff is not going to make new lows. It's just not, because we're still at about even as far as production for raw ore. So right now, I don't see it as bearish as you do, because you're looking at the charts, but I am seeing interesting things popping up. England came out today and said anybody that's going to buy an electric car, we're going to give them £7,600 credit to buy a new car. I was like, where did that come from?
That's
You
that's
know,
that's a serious chunk. I think it has struck me that the electric car market has it's maturing, and a
right?
lot of those incentives were taken away. But I
Yeah,
think with the COVID issues, that and CNBC had a good article about this this week, that a lot of the
oh,
stimulus
that's right.
money is going to be going into green initiatives,
Yeah, yeah.
electric vehicles,
You
solar.
republished that, didn't you? Did you send that article out?
I tweeted it out, and it's on our
Okay.
Facebook page and
Can you
everything.
put that on the end of our show? That was an excellent show.
I will absolutely put that
Yeah,
up because
yeah, because
um,
that'll get people in tune with what's going on with electric cars, recycling. There's just a whole lot of money, which I was calling the tidal wave of cash earlier midweek on our tweet, and got a lot of response from, because I think you're 100% right. I think we're going to see a tremendous amount of cash moving into this.
yeah. Um, so that sort of wraps up last week. Again, holiday shortened week this
Right.
week. Um, we've got consumer confidence out. We've got
That's a big number.
consumer confidence. They're looking at 90. So back in the 90s, it
Yeah,
would be
that would
encouraging.
that would be
Uh,
very
but
encouraging.
again, you worry about the resurgence of COVID kind of
Sure.
rattling people a little bit.
Well, the
Um,
problem too is you'll see the breakout of COVID is hitting a lot of communities which have elderly individuals, elderly like 50 and above age bracket, such as sections of Arizona, sections of Florida that hadn't been hit before, and we worry for those people, because they all stayed in. The minute the warning came out, all stayed in, and we hope that it doesn't ravage those communities, because they've been very, very good about staying in.
Yeah, I mean the data last week were, I think, largely encouraging. I mean, the PMIs rebounded nicely. Uh, Made durable good orders came in at 15.8%.
Big
That
number,
was well above expectations of
big number.
11.5%.
Yeah,
PCE was up 8.2%. So the data and again, this is accumulation periods of April and early May and stuff. So when people were starting to be a little bit more encouraged that the worst of COVID was behind us.
Right.
Um, so I mean, we could see the data start to weaken, I suppose, in the weeks ahead if the COVID really has gotten a new foothold here. Um, but
Now, when do the welfare checks get cut off, and the support checks and all the other things that have kicked in? All of that's like weeks, right? So we're going to see a big flood back into the job market.
Well, yeah, hopefully. But I mean, there is all sorts of announcements of layoffs and stuff.
Okay.
Macy's and a bunch of others are just not bringing people back on board as
Right.
rapidly as they let them go, and we sort of knew that was going to happen.
Well,
Um,
I know you were rather glum on the quoted V back to the top again, and I think rightfully so.
right. So we'll see how the incoming data. I mean, um, the next jobs report, they're
Uh,
expecting 3.09 million is sort of median expectations for non-farm
okay.
payrolls,
Yeah.
and a dip in the unemployment rate to 12.3%. That's
Mm.
still a really big number, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it sure is.
if that's what happens, I mean, it's at
But
least
it's
it's
not
heading in the right
19. Let's
direction.
put it that way, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There were a lot of people concerned that it was going to be in the plus 20,
Right.
25 range at some
Right.
point. And, I guess there's still a chance that could happen if things really take a turn for the worse. But at this point, anyways, the expectation, anyways, is that the numbers headed in the right direction.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more people on the street. We're seeing more cars. I'm seeing, the price of gasoline going up. So obviously demand is picking up across the board,
Yeah.
or at least here
So,
in Chicago. I mean, that's unfair of me to say what's going on in Colorado or Arizona or
yeah,
whatever.
things are looking better here, and
Yeah.
more people around and about and stuff. But still precautions in place for
Yeah.
pretty much
Okay.
everything. So. Well, if you don't have anything else, I
No,
think
I'm
we can
good.
call it a wrap. Um, so again, please give us a like and
Yeah.
subscribe so that you can be notified when we have new videos out. I am Peter Grant with Zaner Metals in Denver. Have a great trading week.
Pete Thomas in Chicago. Thanks again for dropping in, and we appreciate you visiting.